I'm Storm Team 27 Chief Meteorologist Paul Wetzl.
And I'm 33 WYTV meteorologist Ryan Halicki, and we want to give you an update here on the cold that we're tracking next week. Expect that to be a pretty impactful cold, some of the coldest air we've seen in quite a while.
Yeah, we've been looking at these temperatures for several weeks now, watching this storm system move in. That doesn't mean we're not going to get cold tonight, because it's cold. We're dropping into the single digits in spots tonight, but a lot of the emphasis looking into the really frigid air trying to move our way is going to be into the middle of next week when we take temperatures and we drive them below zero. In fact, heading towards some record-breaking territory that we'll talk about coming up. Now, this is still way off to our northwest, Ryan, and we'll be building our way.
And that's what we're watching right now. There's a core of cold air that has slid into the area for this Friday evening. So your temperatures through the day, they fell. We dropped down into the teens, which is where we spent most of it, and then we approached the single digits. And what we're watching as we head into next week is that surge of Arctic air that's still, it's really truly in the Arctic still.
Yeah, it's a long ways away. There's another round that's going to swivel to our north here this weekend, but about 2,000 miles away. We're talking way up toward the top of the earth here west of Greenland. That's the core of the coldest air that is going to push our way as we go into the middle of next week. Some of the coldest air in the world trying to spin down in our direction here as we get on into next Wednesday. Now, how rare is it to have a day below zero for a high temperature? Pretty rare here in Youngstown. In fact, in history, recorded history, we've only had 7 days that have had a temperature of a high of 0 or below. So it doesn't happen very often to get into these cold temperatures, even on some of those colder winter days. And Ryan, challenging some record lows, but not quite sure we're going to get this cold.
And that's what we're looking at too, 6 below zero. That's the coldest daytime high temperature. So the coldest high over a 24-hour period. That was set on January 19th of 1994. That actually is the record for really the coldest day that we've ever had here, even when you look at the low temperature as well.
Because that too is the coldest temperature on record here, -22, set that same day. So definitely the coldest day on record back in 1994. Now, why we are showing this is because upstairs in the atmosphere, our temperatures are getting comparable to this 1994 day. So this is something we'll be watching through the week. I think by the end of the week, these records will still hold here, but we will be flirting with some of these frigid cold temperatures on into next week, Ryan.
And this is going to be the coldest that we have been likely since about 2015. If you go back through last year in 2018 on January 7th, we hit 11 below zero. We have temperatures in the forecast lower than that, colder than that. So you would have to go back to February 20th of 2015. That day we hit 16 below for a low temperature. I remember that night. We were both here, and it was just a clear night, calm winds, perfect setup for the temperatures to drop. But we're looking at being about as cold as we've been since 2015. With
and wind is going to be a variable in our cold temperatures coming this week here as we get into next week, rather, into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, because the lighter the wind, the colder that temperature can get. Unfortunately, though, the stronger the wind, the lower the wind chill temperatures will be. So it's kind of a back and forth. Which one do you want? You know, as far as the cold goes, either way, it's going to be downright cold. This really reminds me of the event we had back in 2014. I think that was January 6th, 2014. That was the original when the polar vortex term really came to be known across the country here. But this is a very comparable type of event moving our way. So let's talk about this storm system, how this plays out.
And as we walk you through on the model data here, what we'll be watching early next week. On Monday, we'll be tracking a storm system that approaches the area, and you see how that wintry mix shows up here very close by. This could start off as a little bit of a mix, but this storm will try and pull in some warmer air. So what we're keeping an eye on is the possibility that Monday night we either see it staying as a mix, depending on the exact track of that, or goes over to a period of rain. But then when we head into Tuesday morning, that's when we start to see that Arctic air pushing in. It catches up with the storm, and we start to see that changeover.
Yeah, and it's going to go over to snow. Now, we've been watching the track of this, and this still has time to change through the weekend. So we'll be watching how low this area of low pressure dips across the lower lakes here into Monday. But right now, it does appear we start Monday dry and warm those temperatures up for that wintry mix. Then over to snow and blowing snow into your Tuesday morning. Could see several inches as this works works its way on through. Now, once we get through this initial snow Tuesday morning, our chance of snow for the rest of the week is pretty small. It's going to go way up into the northern snowbelt regions as the winds blow out of the west. So this Arctic air spilling in won't bring a lot of snow once we get past Tuesday morning. It's just the temperatures we'll be talking about.
And through the day Tuesday, as we head get that storm system to push off to the east, heading into the afternoon, temperatures steadily drop. So we start the day around freezing, but you see here a stop at about 6:30, temperatures down into the mid-teens, and then going into Wednesday morning, we expect temperatures below zero by the start of the day, and a possibility here that we'll likely be looking at school adjustments as we go into Wednesday with this type of cold, but we're not done there. Now, Wednesday afternoon, this particular model tries to take temperatures, you see there, around 1-2 degrees. It's really going to be a struggle to get us to rise above that 0-degree mark Wednesday, because that's when the coldest core is coming.
And that's when we were talking about those 7 days in recorded history at 0 or below for a high temperature. It's hard to get a day like that here. That possibility is here on Wednesday. So that's a day we're looking at that we may be able to add 8 to that 7 as we go into next Wednesday, and temperatures just continue to stay frigid cold. In fact, by the time we get into Thursday morning, we're talking double-digit cold temperatures, and these will be record-breaking as we get into the middle of next week. So it's not only the temperatures, it's the wind, because we are expecting some gusty wind with this cold air, Ryan.
And that model that we just showed you, that was just actual air temperatures. Now, when you start factoring in the wind with this, those wind chills will start coming down fast. This is a look at wind chills forecast here about 7 p.m. on Tuesday, dropping to around 0 degrees. Then through the night, they start heading below zero. So by Wednesday morning, we're talking wind chills in the range of 20 to 25 below zero possible. The improvement in the day Wednesday is wind chills about 15 below. And then take a look at this Wednesday night going into Thursday morning. That's when we expect temperatures to be around their lowest, and wind chills as low as 30 below zero, not out of the question.
And that's some frigid air moving in. And you know, this is again comparable back to 2014, that January 6th. That was a gusty, windy, snowy night with that blowing that snow around in those frigid air temperatures. And then the wind chills were approaching 30, 40, 50 below here. This is a similar type of event trying to move on in here through the middle of next week. And this is dangerous cold when you factor in the wind chills. So this is something we are monitoring very closely in here. And of course, we've still got some days to go through to see whether or not that cold air drops as far south as it's forecast to right now as we get into the middle of the next week. But the wind is going to make this feel much worse for us.
And I remember that storm January 2014, because that's we were both here covering that as well, and I was out live in that, and I remember using our little handheld instrument and clocking a wind chill at about minus 43 degrees. That's the coldest I have ever felt, so certainly from a meteorological standpoint impressive, but that is the type of conditions where you can get frostbite in as little as 10 to 15 minutes, so you got to cover up, and we're still going to be dealing with those wind chills right into Thursday afternoon and even possibly into Friday morning. So really the entire end of the next work week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, what we're keeping an eye on and what we need to watch closely, and we'll likely be challenging record lows.
Yeah, and some of these record lows, we're looking at about 8 below zero on into Wednesday. That would tie a 1965 record of -8. -9 is the Thursday forecast as far as the record low goes in 1948, looking at about -12. So we may be able to break that 1948 record. These are records we don't want to break, but we're getting there. And then even into Friday, we'll be close. That was 1971. We were 7 below zero. We're looking at about 5 below. Interestingly enough, though, it does look like as the newer computer models are coming in, and we'll see if this continues through the weekend, this cold period may be shortened a little. It looked like it was going to extend out. Now, a lot of Friday's low temperatures will depend on whether or not the wind settles down. If that wind settles down into Friday night, we'll be getting definitely challenging that cold record here.
And that wind really helps to kind of mix up the air. So think of it as if you have your bowl of soup that has all of, we'll call it your heat energy in it. If there's no air around it, you see that steam that just rises straight up. But when you start factoring the wind in, if you were to blow on the bowl of soup, you'll see that steam starting to fan out all around. That's how wind works with the air. So there's naturally energy from the sun that's on the surface of the earth, and on a clear night, that can just radiate straight out into space. There's no mixing of the air, so that allows those temperatures to drop fast. When you factor in the wind, really starts to mix it up, so that can keep your temperature temperatures up, but then that wind lowers the wind chill.
Yeah, and it does. And that's why we were talking about, I don't know which one's better at this point, because it's either going to be really cold or we're going to have really cold wind chills. See, either way, it's dangerous at times. And that's why we want to keep in mind our safety tips. And we know this across northeastern Ohio and northwestern Pennsylvania, but always good reminders, Ryan.
That's it. You want to bring the pets indoors. That's something that actually laws now stipulate across parts of the area as well. They have to have, if you can't bring them indoors, some animals can't come inside, right, but they have to have fresh water. So make sure that you're going out there and resupplying the water. It won't take long to freeze. And also, if you have pets that stay outdoors with an outdoor shelter, try and use straw to insulate that. If you use something that's a cloth fabric, some of the just general moisture that our bodies and animals' bodies would relieve would be able to cause that cloth to freeze. That can cause a problem. You also want to check on the elderly.
Yeah, and of course, it's the air pockets we need to keep that warmth. That's why we have hair, right? That's how it works, and the fur on the animals. Yeah, well, the fur on the animals, that helps. It's layers, right? You want those air pockets in between to keep those temperatures. And of course, like Ryan said, checking on your neighbors, the elderly. You never know if they are running into trouble or not. Definitely worth doing. And as far as your automobile goes, and more than likely, we've been through some cold spells. We were -5 earlier this week. Some spots were -16 or colder. You probably know if your battery's grunting a little this week. May have trouble again next week. Keeping the jumper cables in the car, a good idea. And of course, the vehicle safety, always heading out, have those warm clothes in case your vehicle does run into some trouble.
Yeah, that way you don't know how long it may take for someone to get to you. And if your car's not running, this type of cold does not take very long for the temperature inside the car to plummet. And
absolutely,
it's also a good idea to check the batteries in carbon monoxide and smoke detectors. And if you're using a space heater in this type of heat, again, that's an excellent reminder. Really, any time of year, you should be updating and checking those batteries. But also using the space heaters, just make sure you're following the instructions. Those should not be placed near anything that's flammable, and they come with instructions telling you how to place them, how far away from objects that are flammable they should be.
Yeah, heaters working in overtime as we go into next week. So here's the way it shapes up. This is what we're looking for. Tonight is going to be cold. We're dropping into the single digits. We'll be back in the 20s tomorrow. We have a few rounds of snow to go through this weekend. Some light coatings of snow. It's becoming a trend to get that morning coating of snow to cause some slippery travel. That's possible again Saturday morning, again into Sunday morning. And then we talked about those warmer temperatures for Monday that'll help drive in that chance of a wintry mix. But then we get into that cold air next week, and what we're looking for as low as -8 Wednesday morning and -12 by Thursday morning.
And that's Tuesday's kind of our transition day. So while it may start off with a wintry mix and you see 33 degrees the high there, that will be in the morning, and we expect those temperatures to rapidly tumble through the day, making their way all the way down to 8 below zero by Wednesday morning. So Tuesday we'll be dealing with some snow. As it gets colder, that snow becomes fluffier. Blustery wind in there will cause some blowing snow, and then that's when we have those several cold days that we'll be dealing with next week.
And you know, a real interesting January when you think about it. We started with record high temperatures on New Year's Eve, right? And we were 60+ degrees in some spots. Here we are wrapping up the month with record lows. Now that's a crazy swing in the month itself, but definitely a January to remember for sure here. And it looks like we're heading into that dangerous territory in spots next week. So we'll continue to keep an eye on this really frigid air moving our way on into the middle to latter half of next week. We just wanted to kind of give you an idea what we've been looking at behind the scenes, a little lengthier process here rather than just a shortened 2 or 3 minutes that we do on air, and explain what we're watching as we get into some of the coldest air of the season. And let's hope this is the coldest we see for the rest of the winter. We won't know that for sure until March, but at this point, this is definitely a pretty wild turn in temperatures on into the middle to latter half of next week.
Well, and I had someone ask me on my Facebook page earlier when can we expect 80 degrees? When's it going to be 80? And of course, the short answer to that is not anytime soon. But as we were talking about March, you start looking at the records, and the latest that we have a record low temperature that goes below zero is about mid-March. As you start getting close to it, I believe the date is March 10th, but I'd have to check that there. But it's mid-March, And as you head toward the latter half of March, approaching about March 20th, I think, is when that high, the record high, the first one, touches 80 degrees, and then it starts becoming slowly more common after that.
Yeah.
So we're really inching closer to the latter half of winter now,
right?
And hopefully this is the coldest of what we'll see.
Well, yeah, and here we are. The 2/3 of meteorological winter will be wrapping up with record lows, so we'll see what February brings. I'm sure it'll bring some challenges and some ups and downs, but a quick update on the frigid air moving our way for next week. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us this evening as we've continued to team up together with WYTV and WKBN together. Ryan Halicki and Paul Wetzl here, keeping you up to date with any of weather that will be impactful as we go through the next 7 days.